So, is it time for Fabian Hurzeler to maybe move on from Lewis Dunk? Welcome back to Seagull Central. My name is Adam MacDonald and welcome back to my YouTube channel. Thank you very, very much for clicking on this video. If you're new here, thank you very much for finding me. And if you've been here before, thank you for returning to the best Brighton channel out there on YouTube. Right, let's get into this one. This has been one that I think many people have been talking about. It was one that I did actually speak about. I think it was in pre-season, or I don't think the season had started when I made the last video kind of talking about this. But I had a couple of comments. A comment actually on my last video where someone was asking for us to get into this conversation. And it's kind of just around, I guess I'm going to try and make this around the defence more generally. But I think it would be remiss if we don't focus on Lewis Dunk. I think we've played 7-8 games so far in the season, 9 games or so. We're getting into that, we're at the second international break. And this was actually a period where, before the start of the season, I had said, we've brought in these brilliant centre-backs. Buscagli, a Champions League kind of captain in his prime at 26. Coppola looks like an absolute man in a Rolls Royce. One for the future, clearly looks the real deal. How's that going to work with Lewis Dunk, a player who at times last season got exposed a little bit, but clearly there's still a role for him. I felt by going through to a back three, this season, that would have been an opportunity for Dunk to keep his place, Buscagli and Coppola to kind of get into the side, Van Hecke to still remain as our best central defender. And my opinion was that probably Dunk would start the season, and by the second international break, maybe by November, December, he'd have probably lost his place maybe through injury or through the emergence of a particular player out of Buscagli and Coppola. And that would be where we'd be at. Now, we're at that point. And Dunk clearly is still one of the main players for this Hurzeler side. There's no doubt about it. I think he probably is one of the first 3 or 4 names on the team sheet. He's the captain. He is Mr. Brighton, I think, from a fan's perspective. And I want to make this clear when I'm making this video. Any kind of criticism towards him is not meant in a kind of clickbait, over-the-top, critical way, because let's be clear, the bloke is probably our best ever defender, maybe up there as our best ever player. I think you can make cases for Pascal Gross, etc., etc. Deserves a statue, an absolutely unbelievable part of this club's history, and still a very good player. I still think he is a very good player with quite a significant role to offer in this Brighton squad. But I do think he's looked a bit off the pace. And I think the fact we're making this video, the fact that people have been asking for this video to be made, the fact that there's conversations going on in the Brighton fan base shows that maybe he's not what he was, and maybe Brighton could look better with someone else at centre-half alongside Jan-Paul Van Hecke. Now, for me, I do find it interesting because I think it all kind of felt like this season was building up to Fabian Hurzeler playing that back three. I don't know about you, but in pre-season, that was what we were talking about. It really felt like the signings we were making as well was kind of hinting towards Fabian Hurzeler moving to that back three. De Kuiper coming in, who's conventionally a wing-back. Buscagli, a left-footed centre-half. Coppola, a left-footed centre-half who's been seen to play in the middle of a three and can kind of step into midfield. Dunk would be able to play in the middle of a back three, would be protected. It would felt, Kadioglu was an option as well. Veltman, who's played as a right centre half in a three as well. It felt like everything would be perfect considering that's what he's played before. Now, I think there's a wider conversation we can get into around kind of style of play and patterns of play and what are we actually doing under Hurzeler. That's a separate conversation. But he hasn't gone for that. He hasn't gone for that back three. He's stuck to the kind of 2 centre halves of Jan-Paul Van Hecke and Lewis Dunk. Now, I think they've been decent. I think there have been moments, though, where Dunk does look exposed. I think particularly around pace. I think when he's got people playing on his shoulder, people getting in behind, I think he does get slightly exposed. And I think that is a fair criticism that you've got to level at Lewis Dunk. Now, if we brought in someone like Buscagli, if we brought in someone like Coppola to go alongside Jan-Paul Van Hecke, would they be a better option? Maybe not. Maybe not. You don't necessarily know that if you brought Coppola in that he'd be ready to go, and I don't think that's something you can bank on. I think for me, if I had to pick one out of those two to come in, it would be Olivier Buscagli. I think, yes, we've seen him in the Cups, and, yes, it's a different kettle of fish, and yes, he's not even played in the Premier League yet, and yes, out of the two, Coppola's been the one that's featured in the Premier League, if it was only just a couple of minutes here or there. But I do really like the look of Olivier Buscagli. I think he looks like, a leader. You hear him in the games at Barnsley away. You hear him at Oxford, the way he talks, the way he communicates, he's loud. He's an organiser. He's constantly organising that back line. He's got a bit of pace, but also I think he reads the game brilliantly. He's the left footer as well. I think he really, really reads the game brilliantly. You know, the way he intercepts the ball, the way he moves his body, shapes himself. He just looks like a cut above. I think he looks like a very, very good defender, a very good centre-half, and clearly a Champions League level centre-half. At what point is that going to happen, though? I'm not sure. It almost feels to me like this is something that Fabian Hurzeler is not going to do. I feel like we might go the whole season with Lewis Dunk as the centre-half. Now, would I have a massive problem with that? If things continue how they are, I don't think we've seen enough evidence to say, look, he has to be dropped. I think after some games when you're a bit annoyed, you've seen that rhetoric there. But I don't think we're at a stage where it's blindingly obvious that Lewis Dunk has to be dropped. I think there are other problems in the side. But I do think over the course of a season, is that the best option for us at centre-back? I feel like no. And I feel like if it were me, I would be making that change. You'd almost, in kind of a backwards way, and it's messed up, you don't want to think like this, you don't want to drop him. You almost want him to get an injury, a little injury where he comes out of the team, someone comes in, and then kind of he's got to win his place back, and then he's fighting. And at least we then seen one of the other players a bit more regularly in the Premier League, and then he's got some, then he comes back in, and then maybe if Hurzeler then tries to play a 3 to fit them all in or something like that. It feels like you need a situation like that, because how does he drop Lewis Dunk? How does he speak to him and say, look, we're not going to play you? That is a massive moment, isn't it? When Lewis Dunk gets put on the bench. You know, you think back to, when Mourinho did that at Chelsea with John Terry. I've got, for some reason, just random football memories you have. I think it was like a game against Man City at the Etihad, and the cameras just cut on John Terry on the bench for Chelsea in that, was it maybe the end of the title-winning side in 2017 where they won it? And he was being benched, and it's kind of like a pretty sobering moment. And everything's just suddenly a bit different. And I think that would be what it would be like for Brighton. It would be a massive story for us if he was dropped. And does he necessarily deserve it? Maybe not. I still think he's got a lot to offer. Technically brilliant, a great leader, still a fantastic reader of the game, strong, ultimately does score some goals along the way in a season, probably scores a couple of goals every season. But I think for me, it's the fact that we now have better options. I think if our options were still Igor and maybe Adam Webster, absolutely love him, by the way. But if those were our options, I'd kind of think, okay, well, fair enough. There's no kind of proper competition breathing down his neck. I think the fact that you've got someone like Coppola, who clearly looks like a very, very good prospect, it physically looks brilliant, and then Buscaglia, who has got the CV to kind of make you feel like, oh, if the heat's on Dunk here a little bit, if he's getting outpaced a bit, if he's getting beaten, if you're seeing moments where he's not doing the things he would have done a couple of seasons ago, he's getting beaten a bit too easily, does that then feel like the time when you've got to bring someone in like Buscaglia? I don't know. If it were me, I would be making that change in the next few games. I would, at least just to see it, to try it. Because we've seen good performances from these guys in the Cup, and they're obviously very good players. And I think it could just make us feel a little bit better. Maybe even that means going to a back 3. I really, really would not mind it. In fact, I'd encourage it, because I'd like to just see a bit more of a clear style of play in terms of what we're going towards. At least I'll be able to go, okay, this is what we're doing right now. I don't really know what we're doing. Anyway, that's a different conversation. Let me know. Do you think it's time? Do you think we're there yet? Do you think it's the moment where Lewis Dunk needs to get dropped? Do you think we have the options waiting in the wings to kind of come in and take his place? Do you think it would be harsh? Do you think this is even a conversation we need to have? I'm having it because I've seen a lot of people talking about it, and I've been asked to do this. But I'd love to know what you think. Is it time? How would you do it? And do we have the options to come in and replace him and be just as good, if not better? Let me know in the comments below. I would love to hear your thoughts. As always, if you got this far in the video and you've enjoyed it, please hit the subscribe button, turn your notifications on if you haven't done this already, and get in the comments. Let me know what you think. Bang that like button as well. I really, really appreciate your support. I will see you on the next video as we crash on in this international break. Thank you very much for watching. See you on the next one. As always, up the Albion.